Hello and welcome to Toy Polloi 2, and in today's video we are going to be doing some final repairs to Megatron. Now over the last few months you'll have seen these figures be slowly sort of rebuilt and sort of turned into new mascots for the channel. On the left we have Past His Prime, who is a mixture of Ultra Magnus and Optimus Prime, and I really like how that figure looks. He's a little bit of a mishmash, but he's a very nice figure and a very cool mascot. And on the right we have Megatron, who has been built out of the remains of a very busted and broken Megatron. I've repaired his arm, done a few other little fixes and repairs on him. We've now got his sort of blaster cannon, and now finally we have the missing gun barrel, which I need to say a massive thank you to Grant for sending over. This is the final piece that I need to fix up this Megatron Megagon. It's often broken, this part, on all of these sort of vintage G1 Transformer Megatrons, and this figure is no exception. I have to say though, I have never actually repaired one of these, so I need to work out a way of making a new fixing so that we can get this attached to Megagon and get him looking as good as he ever will. So let's get on with the project and see what we can do to repair this part and attach it back onto the figure. So here is the poor Megagon. I've just put the gun barrel in just temporarily, just to show you what he should look like in gun mode. But what happens with this toy, it's a very common break. Apart from the arms always breaking off, this gun barrel snaps off because it's held on here by a fairly weak little hinge part. If I lift up this section, you can see it's that part that always breaks. And on this gun barrel we have a metal piece which is also missing. It looks like the little sort of axle pin is missing. So what I've got to do is rebuild that whole section there. And I've got a sort of rough idea of what I'm going to do, but I've never done it before, so we will just sort of trial and error it today and see if I can actually get something that attaches and is strong enough to hold this in place. It will always be a weak point just because of the way this toy is designed, and I don't think I could make it any stronger than it was originally, so I'm just going to have to try and make something that is good enough. It will still be delicate, it will be able to sort of pose this figure and sort of do what we need to do with him, but I don't think it'll ever be massively strong. But then I don't think the original was ever massively strong. So yeah, let's just give it a go. I need to remove this whole front section because then I can just work on that on its own. Working on it actually attached to the rest of Megatron, it's going to be a bit of a pain. So I'm just going to unclip this. There's a couple of clips on either side. We can take that off, and then there is one screw that goes through. If you've watched my previous repairs of this figure on Toy Polloi 2, you'll have seen exactly what I did to repair it. So I know I can easily undo this. So let's get this section off, and then we can take a proper look at this, and then I can work out some way of making a replacement for that broken piece. But yeah, let's get this apart and then we can work on it properly. Now that I've got this apart, I can see a plan sort of forming in my mind. Basically that should have been a little circular piece with a hole drilled through the middle of it, and that's what the axle goes into. And I've measured the hole on this piece, and it looks like the axle is 2mm, and it looks like this outer piece should be about 5mm in diameter. So what I'm going to do is just use a piece of this 5mm diameter styrene rod. I reckon I can replace that missing part. I don't want to replace all of this because obviously that bit hasn't broken, and so it's still quite a nice strong bond. So if I can just sort of file this down nice and flat and make a piece that replaces that, I think that will work. So what I'm going to do first is actually drill a hole into the end of this 5mm diameter rod, which is 2mm in diameter. So I've put a drill bit in my little handy drill here, and I'm going to drill that in. And then I'm sort of hoping I can just sort of cut and shape the piece that I make there to fit onto here somehow. Maybe we plastic weld it, maybe we super glue it. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but I think that will make something that's going to work. And then the missing axle we can make out of some 2mm thick rod, which I have here. And yeah, so it sort of could work, could not, but that's what we're going to do to find out. So let's have a little sort of play and see what happens. So let me drill a hole into this first, and yeah, we'll do a bit of cutting after that. So far it's all coming together sort of pretty well. So this is the 5mm rod. I drilled a hole in the end and I've now sort of shaped that end piece, just cutting away all the bits I don't need so that it matches with the sort of breakage on the actual Megatron front part. I've just temporarily put a 2mm rod in there just so we can see that it actually works. And you can see that is a pretty good match. So my next plan is just to chop this little end piece off, and then I'm going to super glue that in place using super glue and also a bit of baking powder to make a sort of extra firm bond. And that will also fill in any of the gaps that I've got, because it's not a perfect match, but yeah, it's close enough certainly. And then I can file that all down, and hopefully that will make a nice new little hinge piece. And then we can use this piece to make a new little axle to hold the actual gun part on. But yeah, so far that is working remarkably well. You can see that's a pretty good match. Yeah, let's just get it glued on and see what happens. That is looking pretty good. It's just baking powder and super glue there to attach it, and then I've filed it down to sort of take any of the sort of sharp edges off, and it looks pretty reasonable. So if I get the sort of gun part here, the front part, that should fit over. And I've just got a little offcut here. This is some 2mm styrene rod. We'll check that that fits through the hole, which it just about does. That's quite a nice tight fit. And does it fit through here as well? Again, yeah, that's a nice tight fit. So let's try this. If I drop that onto there and line that all up, get the 2mm rod, I'm hoping I can push that through. And that should hold, which it does. So that needs to swing around there. So the way this gun works is it swings around like that, and then you sort of fold it back under, and that sort of points out the front of Megatron. So that is not looking too bad. Feels pretty strong as well. Obviously if you sort of gave it a yank or a twist, that would snap off, but that is not too bad at all. At the moment you can see that it's just a piece of white styrene. I could paint this with some of the sort of Molotow liquid chrome pens or some other Stuart Semple silver, but as this is Megagon, I'm not going to worry. He's supposed to be sort of built out of broken and sort of rough parts. So I think I'll just leave that white. It shows that he has been fixed, but I do need to just trim off the end of that little styrene rod. Just make sure that's in as far as it needs to go. Let's trim that off. Yeah, that's pretty good. Happy with that. Let's put him back together and see how he looks. That's all now stuck and back together, and it's looking like it works pretty well, but there's only one real way to test this, and that is actually to transform it from gun mode into robot mode and see if it holds. But I'm hopeful, because it certainly looks like it's stuck pretty nicely. You can just about see it there. So let's transform Megagon and see what he looks like again. Yeah, and there we go. He is now transformed, and that's all working very well. I don't want to put too much pressure onto that new joint, because it is always going to be weak. It was always a weak spot, you know, even when this figure was brand new. But now that I've repaired it, obviously the repair is not going to be quite as strong as the original piece. So I think you have to be a bit delicate with it. But Megagon now looks all complete, and I'm very happy with how that's working. And there we go, that is it for this project. I do need to say a massive thank you to Grant for very kindly finding that piece and sending it all the way from Canada. it's really useful, and as you can see, it has worked really nicely. And I think this fix is going to be something that will help a lot of people, because Megatron does suffer from some very common breaks. As I've said, the arms break off and that gun barrel is always broken off. So if you do have one, don't panic, it can be repaired. And as you can see now, I've got two really nice mascots. I think these are pretty much finished now. Megatron doesn't need anything else doing to him. He's rough, he's a bit sort of busted and broken, but he's a fantastic mascot. And then we have past his prime, who is looking really rather nice. I like the fact he has odd bits all over. He's got one prime fist, he's got one Ultra Magnus fist, just bits from all over the place, but he does look really rather cool. So hopefully this video has been of interest to you. If it has, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it, then why not head on over to my main channel, Toy Polloi, and subscribe there as well. And thanks for watching.